Cheese Esther Bible Study, and today we are on chapter 3. Here we get introduced to Haman. He is an enemy. So here we get introduced to Haman, and everything seems going along fine for the story of Esther, right? She's queen. The crown, last chapter we hear the crown was placed on her head. But isn't this just like our lives when everything's going good in our lives? We're like, yeah, everything's going good, and then all of a sudden we get bombarded or sidetracked or hit by something. Well, this is kind of like what chapter 3 is. Chapter 3, we see an enemy pop up, and his name is Haman, and he has a plan. He wants a plan. He schemes up a plan to kill all the Jews in the whole Persian Empire. But why? Let's find out why. After all this took place, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite. He promoted him in rank and gave him a higher position than all the other officials in the kingdom. So he became one of the closest commanders. So he was underneath the king. So pretty much he could do whatever he wanted. It even says that the king gave him a ring. So he was pretty hot, he was hot stuff, and he could do a lot of things for the king in place of the king. So let's skip down to verse 5. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down to him or pay homage to him, he was filled with rage. And when he learned of Mordecai's ethnic identity, Haman decided not to do away with Mordecai alone. He planned to destroy all of Mordecai's people, Jews, throughout the kingdom. So here we see Haman. We see how selfish and prideful he is, because Mordecai would not bow down to him. He's going to exterminate the Jews. I mean, doesn't that sound like something that's already happened here? A few 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, like with Hitler. This is kind of freaky, right? Yes. I think it is. So he goes to King Xerxes on the 12th year in the first month of Nisan, and that's in verse 7. And it is they have a term for that. It's called pure, and what that means, it's called like the lot. It was cast before Haman, and it says it was cast before Haman for each day in each month, and it fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. So let me just reference that in my notes. So Haman cleverly began his presentation to King Xerxes by starting with the truth. There's one ethnic group. So he's presenting to King Xerxes. There's this ethnic group, speaking of the Jews, scattered throughout the peoples. And then he ends with a lie to King Xerxes. They do not obey the king's laws, is what he's telling him. And then let's read down to verse 8. Then he informs King Xerxes, there's this group, the Jews, in the very province of your kingdom. They're living in isolation. So that's another lie. Their laws are different from everyone else's, and they do not obey your laws, my king. It's not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. So here we see how cunning he is. If the king approves, let an order be drawn up authorizing their destruction, and I will pay 375 tons of silver to the accountants for deposit in the royal treasury. So here we see him bribing. Okay, you give me this authorization, and I'm going to put money in your account for letting me do this. So in verse 10, we see the king removed his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jewish people. Then the king told Haman, the money and the people are given to you to do with what you see fit. Verse 12. The royal scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and the order was written exactly as Haman commanded it. It was intended for the royal stirrups. The governors of each provinces and the officials of each ethnic group, and written for each province in its own script, and to each ethnic group in its own language. So if you spoke Hebrew, it was going to be written in Hebrew. If you spoke whatever language you spoke, it was going to be written so you would understand what it was being said. And it was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the royal signet ring. Letters were sent by couriers to each of the royal provinces telling the officials to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jewish people. Listen to this, young and old, women and children, and plunder their possessions on a single day, the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month. So not only is he saying we want you to kill them, we want you to completely annihilate them from the provinces. You can also have their possessions. I mean, that's just evil, pure evil. Verse 14, a copy of the text issued as law throughout every province was distributed to all the people so that they might get ready for that day. The couriers left, spurred on by the royal command, and the law was issued in the fortress of Susa. So now in the fortress of Susa, where Mordecai is, it's reached. And let's read this last little bit here for this chapter. The king and Haman sat down to drink while the city of Susa was in confusion. So that last sentence, the city of Susa was in confusion, just lets me know that the people in Susa were not in favor of the decree. They were confused by this. Why is this all of a sudden happen? We've been here, we've been living among the land, we work, we pay our taxes, and now all of a sudden there's this decree by the king that we're to be completely wiped out. So I can see a lot of fear coming in, a lot of confusion, as that last sentence leaves us with. So stick around and find out what happens in chapter 4.